Thank you, Damon. Who would like to go next? I think John, you said you jumped in after Cheyenne, so please.
Yeah, I can go. So does that work? Can you guys see the web browser?
Yes.
Awesome. So I was focused on researching a vague project description and turning it into a project plan. And I got some good feedback from you last time about trying to do too much in one command. So I broke it into 3 commands, which I'll show you here. And that led to a huge bit of learning for me. So what I did with the first command is ask it to just research the project and give me some sort of objective based on its understandings and a summary of the top 3 related objects or topics to research. And that works just fine. I give it some sort of description of the project, and it helps me understand more what's going on. And then the second task, all I do is I say, take the output from the first task and turn that into a project plan to implement that thing. And this is where the learning came for me. Is the biggest value I see is I can change the role that's responding. So in the first question, I have it be an expert on the thing. And the second question, I have it be an expert on project management.
Yep.
And that's fine. And then the third phase I have here is talking about compliance. And again, I changed the role to somebody that's an expert in SOC and high trust compliance. And I ask it to just tell me the top 5 ways that compliance may be impacted by that project. So that I didn't really get until I was done with it. I'm like, wow, I can change the context of the role. And that solved my problem of just getting a real generic response before. Now it's honing in on what I'm looking for.
Exactly. Assigning a role given experience is what you're doing is you're bringing in different avatars to do certain work, which is what we actually end up doing, right? And when we do certain work, we either take our creative side or we take our writing side or whatever it might be, and we pull that experience. And so that's exactly what you're doing with the AI. Great. So benefits, John, how would you characterize those?
Time savings is significant, but the bigger benefit to me, honestly, is that the project plan, from what I've seen, tends to have an item or 2 that we would have missed otherwise.
Yeah.
And not missing tasks in a project is a good thing.
Yeah,
so that's
very much so.
Yep.
And it goes back to getting a much more high fidelity plan, which actually helps you work down the road. Right?
Yep, exactly.
All right, I think Fermin, you are next, and then Sunli joins. Fermin, please.
Happy to go next. So I extended on the one I created last time. I'm quite happy with it. It's release note creation related. So maybe to explain, I mean, we have a release 2 to 3 times a year. They're quite big. They have 30 user stories in them or more, and maybe 80 to 100 bug fixes. And we're in a very regulated industry, clinical supply related, healthcare. So we need to give a lot of information to our clients about our products to assess the risk, etc. So for every of these items, we have to give a short summary that our clients can understand to express what has changed in the release. And what I try to do is feed the LLM our description field in Jira, which is acceptance criteria mostly and some context around it, and have it create this summary for us.
Nice.
And I think the real value comes in if I can feed it many tickets at a time and do that for many tickets. And so I tried that. This is my prompt. And then I just upload the file. And let it do it. So it should now give me a description for 4 items because I have 4 rows in the Excel file. And it didn't work for me before because I used the free version. But then once I got the paid version, it worked. So now for each of my 4 features, I have a nice description.
Awesome.
And it's not 100% as we know, but it's a really, really good starting point.
2 things. Number 1 is that if you look in the playbook, there is a prompt or an automation for creating customer-facing release notes, if I'm not mistaken. If you take these summary and put it into that prompt, it will actually give you an email, or it'll give you a write-up that you can then publish. Just something to think about. So let's talk about benefits and value.
Yeah, so we do that for the major releases about 3 times a year. I think it takes a day or two to write these. Then with review and everything, it's elapsed time is probably a week or two. And it keeps happening. So it's a recurring event.
Yeah.
And I think the other benefit I see here is that it's either like a junior PM that writes those, and then the senior PM who actually was responsible for the ticket reviews it, or they write it in the first place. So it's not fully consistent always. I think this would also help have a more consistent.
So,
and the other thing I'd like to try is we have certain terms that we just use internally, and externally we want to use a different term. So I'd like to give you these instructions. If you find this term, use that term. I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah. Yes. The more specific you can get, it will do amazing things. Good. Thank you, Permin. And I like what you've done. Please, I'm going to say this to everyone, including you, please copy your prompts into the project so others can benefit. All right. Who would like to go next? I kind of lost track of who came next.
I can go. Ken.
Please.
Sure. So, little context. I have a big problem. So, a large number of backlog items for me were created in Jira, and the shape of the data, the required fields, the way we structured features in Jira was sort of one way, and it was really just everything in one field. So a lot of that data got moved over to AHA, where we now, as a corporate standard, have that data split out. So I have a lot of features that they're still in the backlog. We're not necessarily in design, but I wanted to get them cleaned up. And we have a multi-part structure now. So here, let me hit share. So my goal was to create a prompt where I could take whatever information was in the old Jira format. And sometimes it was very light, sometimes it was extremely detailed. So I have my input data really runs the gamut, but I started with a very light input. This is an example of all of the content that I had for this feature. It was the ability to set default responsible party. So my instruction was to please rewrite, expand, and elaborate upon the input provided and structure your response so that a complete feature is described. It will include feature name, problem statement, benefits, and feature overview formatted as instructed below. So this was, I gave it a good example, and I'm going to come back to context for a minute, or in a moment. I had learned through some other prompt crafting that it was very helpful if I added just what is the product in this case. So my context started with the product is a workflow-based, healthcare-focused contract management system called Simpler Contract, gave it its name, and then described what it did. So it was really just my context started as these two things when I started experimenting with all these prompts. This has become really a template that I've included. It includes much more detail about how we think about workflows, the phases that can actually, so I just kept adding definitions for our compliance modules and things like that.
Perfect.
I've just been adding onto this and just copying and pasting it. So as I was experimenting, the first time I ran this one for the set responsible party, it came back with a pretty decent elaboration for each of the sections. They were really pretty close to being on, but what I discovered is that some information that I then added, I'm trying to add it in a reasonable and a logical order up here, because the formatting gets messed up as you go from your source document over to whichever GPT you want to paste it into. So yeah, so I found that adding more information about what a workflow is, its attributes and phases, really turned the response that I got, particularly from Claude. I ran this through Claude and all of the other ones. I had a problem with Perplexity, oddly enough. It seems to just hang for me. I don't know if I'm trying to feed it too much information or what have you, but the Claude response was really the best one. I reviewed this with a couple of people on my team to just make sure I wasn't missing anything, but it really did. It took 2 or 3 sentences of the original one, came back with a feature name, came back with a problem statement who was really pretty on point. This was where there were some issues the first time, which were rectified by the addition of some new context that I realized I didn't have. And the nice thing about the context is I went to our knowledge base and I literally copied and pasted the elements that describe a workflow. I didn't have to create anything new. So I just needed to feed it in to the prompt. Yeah, and overall, this is really good. I did have a failure. One of my early versions of this prompt, I tried to do also the acceptance criteria, but that was too much. And John Talon was his finding was spot on, and it kind of dovetails with what you taught us last time. If I change the context now and rewrite the role, not the context, the role,
Yeah.
and then feed in the output of this, I think it will generate some pretty good acceptance criteria.
I agree.
So I ran it. Like I said, I ran it through GPT, ChatGPT, Perplexity failed. I ran it through Gemini. Of late, I've really been having much better luck with Claude. So I tend to spend more time putting things through Claude for some reason. I'd love to understand why.
Like I said, Claude is the way the Claude response is more human, and the way OpenAI response is more, I don't want to use the word more human, but it is more, it's very fact-based, or yeah. Anyway, that's why a lot of writers use Claude, because it's just easier to read and it does great with summarization. If I had to do brainstorming, I would actually use OpenAI. If I had to summarize, I would actually use Claude. Right? So in here, you actually have three different elements, right? You have the prompt statement, which is summarization. You have the benefit, and then you have the feature. So each one, you don't have to, but each one, different LLMs will give you better responses, right?
Right.
The benefits and feature overview, probably OpenAI is quite good at it. So, but the problem statement is probably something in which you can use for Claude. So thank you.
Comparison. Just one last thing. I think I did a second experiment on a much more complicated feature. So in this one, these were all of the inputs that I gave it, and it actually did a worse job with more input. I found the resulting, it made just huge assumptions around the problem statement and the benefits and the overview. So there's going to be a sweet spot with regard to which of these I can run this through. So I think if I consider the sweet spot where if I were to use this prompt exactly as it is, I probably have between 50 and 75 features that I could run this through and get pretty darn close. And it would probably save a couple of hours at least per feature. So I'm thinking just this prompt alone is somewhere between 100 and 150 hours if I were.
That's perfect. That is good and impressive. And you're right about two things. Number one is there's always an art about how much context you put in, right? So remember when we talked about our prompts, the red and the black. The black is what is reusable, red is context. And so you always have, if you put too much context, you're leading the AI down a path. If you don't give enough context, you're giving it too much to assume. And so finding the right context and balance is important. And as you guys get used to this, you'll just realize intuitively how much is good and how much is not good. But that just takes time. And the idea that this can actually save you hundreds of hours is fantastic, right? That itself just paid for your course. So, all right, thank you, Ken. Who's next? Who would like to go next? Jennifer, please.
Yeah, I will do that. Give me a second to share. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
All right, so I went back to my original problem around epics, and I broke this up into different prompts. And so what I did, I came up with a problem that I wanted to solve, which in this case is about B2B customers being able to place orders and in a digital fashion and have it effective and efficient. And so I went and did this one. I tried to keep everything pretty clear and simple as possible.
Okay.
And then I gave it a finite number. I asked for 10 epics, which they in the dark bold font is the actual prompt, and the response is below. And so I thought it did a really great job. I tried it in Gemini, Perplexity, and ChatGPT, and I was really impressed with the results. So I selected one and did a separate prompt and asked for user stories for that particular epic. And so I'm scrolling down to show some of the results.
Nice.
And what's interesting to me is I made sure that, I included that they could be tested separately. I did give it a finite number of user stories. And it was interesting because there were some things that came up, or that things that perhaps I might not have at first glance have even considered. So I thought that was cool. I did have a couple things that I wanted to follow up. If I were to take it a third step down, I would do acceptance criteria or KPIs and make a separate step and select whichever one it came up with and then dive deeper into it. I did find that rather than trying to put everything in one prompt, it did work a lot better. I also found that on the ideation part of it, the different LLMs had different responses in terms of what they were suggesting.
Yes.
And some of them had a few things that were unique. And then some of them would take the same thing and say, instead of saying voice command, they might call it conversational, interface or something like that. But I did find it really interesting. And I did find keeping simplicity and breaking it up into smaller tasks was really helpful.
Yeah.
The question that I have is, if I had not given a finite number of user stories, how would you know what I'm saying? How many would?
I think it defaults to 10.
Defaults to what?
10.
Okay. Well, that was a guess. So,
I believe it usually gives you, I think every LLM is different, but I think if you ask it for a list, most likely it will give you a list of 10, right?
Okay.
I think that's just built into it. You can always change that default, right, by your instructions. But that's great. Jennifer, what you've just created is you've created your own workflow. Well, not just you, but everybody else. When you guys do multiple prompts the way you have, what you're doing is you're creating a new workflow. And you're using the AI at every step to do a micro task, and then you intervene, and then you tell the AI what to do next. That is exactly the right relationship to have with the AI. Instead of just asking it to do everything in one shot, which is what most of us start off with doing. This works much better. And frankly speaking, you are more control, so to speak. And you get better results. Jennifer, one last question. Can you share with us our benefits from a quality, quantity, time saved?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Absolutely. So just huge amount of time savings. Everybody that's here is in product, so they know what it is to have to write out stories, user stories, and epics. It's something that we do all the time. And so it's a big time savings. And also the quality and the uniqueness of the ideation piece of it was really, really strong. And so not only in my mind is it a time savings, it's also around quality and just diversity of thought, because you're looking at it from a particular perspective. They have more of a 360 look at that problem that you're trying to solve, and they might include perspectives that you might not consider.
Perfect. Is it possible for you to quantify the time savings?
Okay. Yeah, I can give that a go. If I just want to talk about, the part of it that I've done here in terms of just writing out.
How long would it have taken without AI, and then how much with AI, right?
Oh, wow. So with AI, maybe I spent less than an hour on this, all sides of it. And I did quite a bit of experimenting in the different modalities. And so I would say if I had to do this without AI, it would have taken me several days, because I would have probably had to go in and do some research in order to back some of this ideation up.
Perfect. It's amazing what it can do. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
And that itself is huge savings, right? We talk about saving an hour or two, but in reality, it can save you over 80 to 90% of your time if you do it right. Anyone else, please? Go ahead, Alex.
Great. Let me share. Good. Oh, good. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this was the prompt. So one of the things that I talked about in the last class was sort of talking
Alex,
about.
we can't see your screen yet.
Oh, sorry. Boom. Can you see it now?
Unfortunately,
not
no.
yet.
No.
Screen two, share. Now?
There you go.
Okay, great. All right, good. So one of the things we talked about was sort of, since we are all in product management, right? I was thinking about the core of what I spend a lot of my time with is that the starting point is always a feature description. It's a feature.
Yes.
It's, we can start broad with strategic goals and initiatives and all of those big things, but it all comes down at some point to a feature.
Yes.
So what I found was if I'm starting from a feature, there are so many things that spiral out from that moment. Can I create a prompt that automates those tasks that start from a feature? And so one of the things that I started doing, and this was, Ken and I had a couple of conversations about this as well, is providing the context. So I started the prompt with, I am a product manager and I work at this company. And then I asked the GPT to be, your role is to be the most experienced product management professional imaginable. Then what I did was to provide that wrapper to get what I was trying to provide the context, that right amount of context. I created a description of one of the products that I manage. Then I left the description in there. And then what I found really helped with my results was also adding a description of our customers. Who ultimately is our customer? So the GPT could understand the context of who I was, where I worked, and what customers we were serving with our solutions. Then I created a spot in the prompt to add the actual feature. And then from there, I automated a whole bunch of tasks. So what I wrote was I started with, give me one of the things that I looked at. AHA and ADO are fields that we must fill in that are required internally. And those start off with describe a prompt, write a problem statement. Start with the feature, then it goes to a problem statement, then it goes to a benefit hypothesis, then it goes to acceptance criteria, and all of these things are click, 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 endless amounts of, just one more thing, right? So we all do this endlessly. So I created all of these prompts to create from one feature the problem statement, the benefit hypothesis, acceptance criteria, release notes, copy for the marketing team, copy for the sales team, an executive summary, and a summary for the support team. This thing started to really bang it out. It's really, really interesting what came back. Is it 100%? No, but is it 80, 90% there? You betcha.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. And so this easily, this amount of work would be an hour per feature savings that's generated here. I found it incredible. So I'm quite pleased with the work that I did with this in ChatGPT, and I'll use it for sure.
Yes, that's the point. So you said you saved about an hour per feature. How many features do you do in a week or a month?
Oh, I can't even guess. I mean, sometimes at least 100 a quarter, maybe more.
Yeah. So let's say that's 100 hours per quarter.
Yeah, easy.
400 hours. Not bad.
Not bad.
So, okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? By the way, I love stories like this, right? So it's not just showing your features, but also you guys telling me what you guys were able to save. So thank you. Jim, I see you, please.
Yeah, I'll go. Thanks very much, Mustafa. Appreciate all of this. Let me just share my screen here. Can you see my desktop now?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's coming up. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So for mine, one of the things that our product managers are constantly doing is needing to respond to different RFPs for different requests for proposals for customers. And we have kind of a long tail in being able to do that because we involve product, we involve finance and several different people to do that. And so really trying to create a prompt that would help us take our RFP library of completed RFPs that people have done manually and, you know, create a chatbot or a co-pilot that would help us respond to those really, really quickly. And I think the first stage is to getting to a point where we can have AEs or anybody who's filling out an RFP ask a question from an RFP that they're not familiar with, and the co-pilot would essentially generate an answer. I think the, you know, V2 would be to upload a document, some type of formatted document that has all of the questions that are standardized, right, and receive back a document of all of the answers, because some of them can be pretty detailed. And so this is I followed the prompt formatting that you presented to us, and essentially telling it that, you know, that I want to, you know, only use RFP responses that have already gone through legal and financial approvals, and, you know, to help us win deals more quickly. And so you know, what I'm seeing is, what we're shooting for anyway, is reducing the response time from 20 days down to 1. I think it's a little hard to quantify in terms of like how much work is being done manually, but in terms of like number of days, getting it from, you know, 3 weeks or so down to being able to do this in the same day or just 2 days.
Yeah.
And so we've taken this and I've experimented in Claude and GPT. I've actually taken this into our own ChatGPT here within our system. And I've been pretty impressed so far with the answers that I'm seeing back. And I'm able to actually take those answers and format them specifically for my product as well. And so we're going to be, you know, continuing to hone this down, and continuing to refine this in the future.
I love it. And I agree with you. Writing RFP responses is a pain.
Absolutely.
When I used to run the sales team at IBM, it was countless of hours, countless, and responding the same question in a different way because everybody asked the same question in a different way.
Sure.
So the fact that you can do that. And I'm sorry, so you were able to quantify the value, or the goal was to go from responding from 20 days to 1 day? Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a general estimation of how I would maybe quantify, you know, response time back to a customer. But I think it's a little bit different in this case, because instead of just you know, utilizing this myself, I want to share this with other product managers throughout the organization. And ultimately, we want to be able to share this with AEs and those in our revenue org to be able to use this themselves.
Yes.
So they don't even have to come to product, right? We can build this, give this to them, and then they can use it to respond more quickly. And obviously we can look at it and make sure that the quality is there, and we're not, you know, we're not giving customers like a hallucinated response or something like that.
Yeah.
We can put in some level of QA, but ultimately we're trying to see what can we do to leverage, really, you know, just like the name of the course, how can we 10x our productivity using these tools, and even give them to others who may not be as technical in the organization.
I agree. It's great, Jim, because that's a perfect segue to the next one. Once we're done with this, is because what we're focused on this class is really about individual productivity. But then how do you take that and go to what I call level 2, which is team productivity? And then level 3 is organization productivity. And so the benefits change, but the way you do things remains the same. So anyway, thank you. Before we go there, let's go. Anyone else? We have about 3 minutes before I want to get to the next section. Thank you, guys.